Hey, make sure my mic's on. Good evening, everybody. I wanted to step in here and give everybody an update on what's going on with Hurricane Dorian. And it is just, it's amazing. It's unbelievable. It's as bad as it gets hurricane-wise for the Northwest Bahamas. And I say it's as bad as it gets tonight. It really started yesterday as it came into Abaco Island, which is the island here, and then this is Grand Bahama. I'm just beginning to see a few pictures out of Abaco, out of Marsh Harbor, and it just looks like a tornado went through there. Trees are just snapped and down, and everything is just blown apart. It's very bad, and that's really because that's what happened. This was an EF4 tornado yesterday as it came through Marsh Harbor and Abaco Island in the Bahamas, and now, so this is a 6-hour loop. This is what the storm has done over the past 6 hours, and it just hasn't moved at all. It just hasn't moved. Now that's 6 hours. Let me show you what it's done over the past 12 hours. All right, so let's back it up. So here's the last 12 hours. And my finger hasn't moved. And if you were in the center, if you were in the calm center of Dorian 12 hours ago, you're still in it. If you were in the southern eye wall, you're probably still in it. Just incredible. And so the eye wall, that's where the maximum sustained winds of 140, which is what they are right now, 140 mile an hour sustained, gusting to 160, 170, or in that band of rain right around the eye wall. Inside, right there in the eye wall, which is about 15 miles in diameter, it's absolutely dead calm. And the sun's out, and it's beautiful. And then it's terrible right outside of that. So that's 12 hours. It hasn't moved at all. Let me back it up to 18. So this is not unprecedented. This has happened before. There was a hurricane in 1998, Mitch, that devastated Honduras, and it sat off the coast of Honduras for 3 days. So this is really day 2 of a storm basically not moving, but this is the last 18 hours. So in 18 hours, it's moved western eye wall here, western eye wall here. Again, it's about 12 miles. It's moved about 12 miles in 18 hours. Let me see how, I think I've got data in here going back at least 24 hours. So here's 24 hours, and you can see there's been a little difference. Let me zoom in on the eye wall. The eye wall has gone from, that's when it was just tornado-like, to, can you see how it gets ragged and it expands a little bit? So that's an indication that the storm is beginning to weaken. Still a devastating Cat 4 hurricane, winds of 140, but at the time when it came over Sweeting K, it was, winds were still maxed out at around 180. You can see the difference as it begins to be a little more ragged, so it's weakening. And what's happening is when a storm sits in one spot like this for hour after hour after hour, it's feeding on the warm surface water of the Atlantic Ocean. And sea surface temperatures in here as it approached were in the mid to upper 80s. Plenty warm, plenty of energy. But what will happen is as it sits in one spot, it will upwell. It will pull up cooler water from deep underneath. And so the sea surface temperature underneath the storm is beginning to drop. It's beginning to cool off a little bit. So it's reducing the amount of energy it can pull off the ocean's surface. That's where these tropical systems get all their energy, from the warm waters of the Atlantic or the Pacific or the Indian Ocean, wherever you happen to be. But you can see, once again, look at how this was just tornadic-like 24 hours ago, yesterday evening, and now this evening it's getting a little more ragged, so it is beginning to weaken, but it's still a Cat 4 hurricane. Just incredible. Just incredible. So here is where it, and let me see if I've got 36 hours of data in here. Yeah, I do. So here is a 36-hour loop. And yesterday afternoon, as this came across Abaco Island and Marsh Harbor, so it was as if an EF4 tornado, winds sustained 160 to 200 miles an hour. That's an EF4 tornado. Usually those are maybe a half mile wide. This was a 20-mile wide EF4 tornado coming across Marsh Harbor, you just can't survive that. Nothing is able to stand in that. So the pictures coming out of Marsh Harbor that I have seen, and we're going to have this for you at the 10 o'clock news tonight on the TV side, it looks like a tornado went through. It looks like a big tornado went through, like a Kansas tornado went through there, and it did. So places like Baker's Bay have just taken the hardest hit you can take from a tropical cyclone, which is what this is. So that's where it stands right now. So let me go through all the data, and then I'll show you why it got so strong. There are a couple of key ingredients that got it up to where it ended up. So here we go, winds at 140, that's where we are right now. Sustained at 140 as it sits over the northern side of Grand Bahama Island. It's not moving. Pressure's at 942. So that's up another millibar in the past hour. As this number goes higher, the winds go lower. So we want to see the pressure rising, and that's what's happening to weaken the storm. And so yesterday at this time, I believe the pressure was down to 910 millibars. So now we've come up to 942. Winds were at 185 at this time yesterday. Now we're down to 140. So again, we're going to go over this. So how did it get so strong? So you need energy. We've got that. We had it. Sea surface temperatures going into the Bahamas, 85 to 89 degrees. That's plenty warm. Anything above 80 degrees, you can support tropical storm development. So 89 is very, very warm. So a lot of warm water in place. Very low wind shear. These storms want to stack up vertically up and down to become strong. If you have wind shear, it will tilt the storm over, and that weakens the storm. But there was no wind shear, so nothing to tilt the storm over to weaken it. And then something that we don't talk about a whole lot, but I'm going to talk about right now and explain it to you, is outflow at the upper levels, like way up at the top of the atmosphere, 55, 60,000 feet. Think of this as exhaust, like the tailpipe of your car. You've got to have exhaust or outflow at the top to get these things to crank like Dorian has done. So again, we looked at this incredible satellite composite. This is the radar enhanced. What we've done is infrared enhanced. We've highlighted the colder cloud tops so we can see where the strongest storm action is taking place. And that's what you're seeing there. There's no storm action in the calm center, and then this is where it's just terrible. You can see, I drew this, by the way, 3 hours ago. 91 miles east of Palm Beach. It's still 91 miles east of Palm Beach. So what's happening is at the surface, so these are surface-based storms, these tropical cyclones, and the winds feed into the surface low pressure. And they feed in counterclockwise. They feed in. So that's what's happening right now. And as they feed in, they're feeding in because there's low pressure. There's vertical motion in the atmosphere right there at the center of that low pressure. Here's another way to show it. So you've got inflow at the surface, and then it goes up through these the red areas, those red thunderstorms. It goes up, and then it goes out and spreads out as outflow way up high at the top of the atmosphere, up where the jets fly. That's upper level outflow. And again, this is the exhaust. It's like energy going through an engine. It's got to go into the engine. It fires the pistons. Then you've got to have exhaust. If you block the exhaust, it will cut off the flow through the storm, and it would weaken the storm. Instead, we had perfect outflow, which allowed the storm to just explode. It's like being able to hit the accelerator like this, flooring it on your car. Just floor the gas, and this is it flooring the gas, and there was all this outflow at the top. So the exhaust said, yeah, sure, bring it. We can bring that flow right on through the storm and strengthen it. And you can see this. So you've got a counterclockwise circulation near the center. That's the surface circulation. 60,000 feet up, it's clockwise. It's an anticyclone. And see these high wispy clouds? So watch again, watch them. See how they're moving out away in a clockwise fashion? You can see them spilling out. So that when you see that, and we look for this on satellite, when you start seeing outflow like that spinning clockwise, way at the top of the atmosphere, that is an indication that the storm may exceed intensity forecast guidance from computer models, and that's exactly what happened here. It totally exceeded it, just blew up. Outflow, upper level winds spin clockwise, and that's the exhaust, that's the tailpipe, just and you flooring the gas and it being able to handle it like an engine. So where's this thing going? This is the latest GFS, latest American model. It's got the storm center right where it is, so we've got it verified there, at least with the good initiation of the model. And this latest run is very optimistic for Florida. It moves it almost due north, and by tomorrow afternoon it's sitting here. So it moves 90 miles over the next 24 hours, which is very slow, but at least it gets away from Grand Bahama Island, and then there's Abaco Island, gets away from there and stays far enough offshore so we get tropical storm force gusts on the coast of Florida, but we don't get any hurricane winds. They would have a windy, wet day. They'd have some beach erosion, very dangerous surf. That would be the worst of it if the American model, this GFS model, does verify. This is the position 5 p.m. Wednesday. Again, sitting about 90, 100 miles east of Jacksonville. On that type of track, that's not going to be a problem at all for Florida. So they've prepared for the worst, hope for the best. They may get the best outcome. They might. As we know, computer models are not perfect. But this is now a consensus with all the models. And if you remember on Friday we were here and we were talking about this, that some of the models were beginning to suggest that maybe it would stay off the east coast of Florida. Maybe that might happen. And now all the spaghetti plots, well, you can see there's space right there between the coast and the center. They're all off the coast. They graze the Outer Banks of North Carolina. That's very common as a Cat 2, Cat 1, then race up into Nova Scotia. So we're now getting consensus that it's going to stay off the Florida coast and spare Florida. Here is the official forecast cone from the Hurricane Center, the best minds in hurricane forecasting. If you remember at this time on Friday, that cone encircled all of Florida, even a bit of the eastern half of the Gulf of Mexico. And now we've tightened it up. And the center of the cone keeps it about 90, 100 miles off the east coast of Florida. Still possible they could be wrong and it could graze Florida or stay further out. When these storms stall like this, and what it's waiting for is a trough to come by in the upper levels and pick it up, but that trough hasn't arrived yet, so it's just kind of, we're waiting. And it's just the worst case scenario for the Bahamas. I'm very, very concerned about what we're going to see has happened in the Bahamas. And for folks in Florida who have bought all these supplies, and companies that have bought supplies and generators, and the storm misses those folks, people in Florida have already begun to be like, hey, if this does miss us, as indeed it might, we're going to send the stuff we bought and donate it to the Bahamas because they are going to need it. So here's the longer term forecast track up the east coast, grazing the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and then up to Nova Scotia. That would be the best case scenario for this storm. So there are actually 3 other spots we're watching in the tropics. Here's Dorian. We've got a disturbance off the west coast of Africa, 90% chance for development. We've got a disturbance in the central Atlantic, 40% chance for development. And for those here in Houston, this spot in the Gulf of Mexico has a 70% chance of developing into a tropical depression or a tropical storm. We are not overly concerned about it here in Houston. We're watching it carefully, but we're not overly concerned. And here's why. So again, there's a little area of low pressure trying to form right here. And look, there's even some outflow. We talked about that outflow at upper level. See how it's clockwise. It's not perfect like it is over Dorian, but we've got a little outflow. So that's one of the reasons why Hurricane Center folks are looking at this. We're looking at it like, yeah, we've got outflow, we got low pressure at the surface, we got thunderstorms. There's a chance this area of disturbed weather could definitely develop. However, there's another big player that's going to dominate the weather pattern across North America, and it is going to keep this system south and push it into Mexico, and hopefully before it even really becomes a strong storm. And that is this big ridge of high pressure. So again, think of this. I'm going to try to draw a mountain. Think of this as a big mountain. That's a mountain peak. Think of this as a mountain of air. And these tropical systems, not only can they not climb that mountain, but they get caught up in the flow around it. And so that flow should push this little system into Mexico. So Tampico might get some heavy rain over the next, as we get toward the middle part of the week, but that would be the worst of it. We'll put this in motion. We go to Tuesday, we go to Wednesday. Here's our mountain. It builds south. It builds south into Texas, and it just blocks that little storm from ever having a hope of moving north. So it moves into Mexico. So Tampico is expecting some wet weather. Whereas what this means for Houston is, here we are in Houston, we're under the influence of that mountain of air. It sits on you, it's sinking air. Thunderstorms need rising air to form. So sinking air just zaps the clouds, and the rain chances will be 10% or less for tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and we're going to get hot. By the way, while that's happening, this is Dorian, who on Wednesday is sitting off the Florida coast. But you see this little dip right here? So that's the jet stream, and it's a dip, a trough. And so what that's going to do is open a little door. We've got a high pressure mountain here. We got our high pressure mountain here. There's a little space in between. That's the escape route for Dorian. And this trough is going to dip down just enough so it's going to literally grab a hold of Dorian and pull it to the north. So that's what's going to have it finally race off as it gets caught up in that flow up to Nova Scotia and pull it. But we're just waiting for that to develop. This is what it looks like on Wednesday. The storm will finally begin to accelerate out of here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then for those of us here in Houston, here's our extended forecast. Hot, 98 Tuesday, 99 Wednesday, 100 Thursday, 99 on Friday. We are very hot for the first week of September. And just one more time, this is just such an incredible and rare sight. I don't know if this will go back that far. Yeah, so here's 36 hours. So here's the last day and a half. Tropical cyclones this strong are very rare events. Tropical cyclones this strong that actually strike land, even more rare. So it's very unusual, but this is what has happened, and this is why we track these things and watch them like a hawk from start to finish through hurricane season. And we are praying and hoping for the best for all the folks across the Bahamas. I know, a lot of people know someone who has interest there, friends, family, relatives. And if you can help, they'll be needing some help as we head forward in time. All right, so that's the latest update on Dorian. We will have an updated track from the Hurricane Center. It comes out just at 10 o'clock, so you can tuck into bed, turn on Channel 11 on the TV side, and we will have the update, and we'll have all the latest information on what's going on with the storm and the damage and what's going on to help save lives there at 10 o'clock on the TV side. We will see you then for the next live update.